Hey guys, my name is Jaleesa Katz, and I'm back for another video. I hope you've all had a very wonderful Christmas and New Year's, fidget and happy holidays. But today I sort of just wanted to talk about some of the words that we use within the Tourette's community. Fidget things, like Echolalia, Coprolalia, or even just the word tics. I'm not a professional of any sort. I'm just, fidget. This is just my own sort of explanation of the words that we use, to my understanding. Within the Tourette's community that might be confusing to others. Fidget. The first word just being Tourette's or Tourette syndrome, or some people call it TS. Now I say in tons and tons and tons of my videos, cats, that Tourette's is a neurological condition that makes me make movements and noises that I can't control called tics. And actually to have Tourette's, you have to have at least one vocal tic and 2 motor tics for over a year without going more than 3 months without ticking. Fidget, and your symptoms have to start before the age of 18. Contrary to what some people may think, you do not have to swear uncontrollably or have what's called Coprolalia, but I'll explain that later on in the video. What is a tic? I'm going to read the definition that Wikipedia gave me. Fidget, because it's just easier. Fidget. A tic is a sudden, repetitive, non-rhythmic motor movement or vocalization involving discrete muscle groups. Tics can be invisible to the observer, such as abdominal tensing or toe crunching. Common motor tics and phonic tics are respectively eye blinking and throat clearing. Basically, again, kind of like I say in a lot of my videos, a tic is a movement or a sound that you cannot control. Tics can be broken down into 4 types, and that is motor tics, vocal tics, simple tics, and complex tics. Now, a motor tic is an uncontrollable movement, like maybe a head shake or clapping. Fidget. A vocal tic is an uncontrollable noise, like when I squeak or say fidget. And motor and vocal tics can be either simple, like a twitch or a squeak or a shoulder shrug, or complex, like clapping or jumping or saying complete sentences. And I've heard some people describe that complex tics can look like something that someone could do on purpose, but it interrupts your normal behavior. Like someone could say fidget on purpose, but obviously I say fidget in the middle of my sentences where it doesn't belong. They're out of context. Tics are often preceded by a premonitory urge, and I'm actually going to link an article about the premonitory urge in the description because it explains it a little bit more in depth. But basically a premonitory urge is like what I feel before I tic. Often before I tic, not 100% of the time, but often, I feel this buildup of pressure and sort of tension and just a feeling that I really can't describe that comes before I tic. And ticking releases that urge, and that's called the premonitory urge. So yeah, when people say premonitory urge, they mean the feeling that you get before you tic. But like I said, the article in the description explains it much more in depth, I guess. It's also worth mentioning that Tourette's is just one type of tic disorder. And a tic disorder is sort of any sort of disorder that causes tics, basically. You can have what's called a chronic tic disorder, or sometimes it's also called a persistent tic disorder, if I'm not mistaken, which is pretty much the same as Tourette's, but you have either only motor tics or only vocal tics. So remember how I said, like, to have Tourette's, you have to have at least 1 vocal tic and 2 motor tics. But if you have, a lot of motor tics for over a year, starting before the age of 18, but you never have a vocal tic, then you have a chronic motor tic disorder, fidget. Or likewise, if you have some vocal tics, but you have no motor tics, and those go on for over a year before the age of 18, then you have a chronic vocal tic disorder. And you can also have a transient tic disorder, which means you have some tics, but they haven't lasted over a year yet. Excuse me. They haven't met the criteria of being Tourette's or a chronic tic disorder because they haven't lasted long enough. And for all of these, your symptoms have to start before the age of 18 to meet the diagnostic criteria. So the thing that Tourette's is known most for by far is something called Coprolalia. And that is the swearing, perfect timing. That is the swearing side of Tourette's fidget. It's so important to understand that not everyone has coprolalia. Only 10% of people with Tourette's have coprolalia or swear uncontrollably. As you may have guessed, I happen to be one of those 10%. But it doesn't make up all of Tourette's. And if you're wondering what the definition of coprolalia was, the Oxford English Dictionary defines it as the involuntary and repetitive use of obscene language as a symptom as a symptom of a mental illness or organic brain disease. You can also have Copropraxia, which is rude or obscene or inappropriate gestures, like the middle finger. That's one that I have as of recently. Or interestingly enough, you can also have Coprographia, which is obscene writings or drawings or writing words or typing words. I thought that was kind of interesting. And if you're talking about swearing Tourette's in general, including both the words and the gestures and, occasionally writing out swear words, fidget, those all fall under this thing called Coprophenomena. I know, big words, but Coprophenomena is just sort of a big word encompassing doing obscene things uncontrollably. Yeah. Another part of Tourette's that's not talked about enough is Echolalia. Echolalia is sort of when you repeat other people's words or sounds. A good example of this fidget is when I was sitting in church a few weeks ago next to this mother and her kid, and the kid was sort of moving around and talking a bit and being a little bit disruptive, and the mother was getting a little bit annoyed. Fidget, so she told her kid, "Stop it." And immediately afterwards, I had to say, "Stop it." That's echolalia, when you have to repeat someone else or a sound around you. Fidget. And just like you can have Copropraxia, which is rude gestures, you can also have Echopraxia, which is mimicking other people's gestures. So someone might wave, and I have to wave back as a tic. And generally copying other sounds or gestures is called Echophenomena. You can also have Palilalia, which is also confused with Echolalia. But instead of repeating stuff around you or stuff in your environment, you're repeating yourself. So if I did it in that sentence, I would say, "You're repeating yourself, 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 yourself." That would be an example of Palilalia. Some other less well-known types of tics are Dystonic tics. So that's kind of slow, writhing tics. So I sometimes have Dystonic tics in my hands, and they kind of look like this. Like slow, writhing movement. Like I sort of just did with my neck. Sometimes talking about tics triggers them, so yeah. Tonic tics are sort of sustained muscle tensing. So if you go like this for a while, or you tense all of your muscles, or sometimes I have to tense my neck sort of like this for a little while. Those are called tonic tics. And probably the most common type of tic is a clonic tic. That's when you do a really fast twitch or jerk, or it's like a jerking of the muscles. So something like this, or like a quick shoulder shrug, or a jerk of the arms, which I just triggered. Those are all clonic tics. You might also hear people describe either tic attacks or ticking fits. I Drink the Seawater has some great videos about those. I'm going to link them in the description. I've looked for some more formal definitions of this online, but none of them seem to really fit, so I'm just going to try to explain it to the best of my ability. They're basically when you have a huge fit or attack, sort of tics, to the point where you're almost like incapacitated, I want to say. For me personally, tic attacks would be a sort of episode of tics that are so severe that I'm almost incapacitated. And if you want a more in-depth look at that, again, look at I Drink the Seawater's videos because she explains it much, much better. And last but not least, Tourette's can also come with a range of what are called comorbid disorders, or basically disorders that come along with Tourette's or are related to Tourette's. These can include obsessive compulsive disorder, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, fidget, generalized anxiety disorder, oppositional defiance disorder, and a bunch more. Fidget. Tourette sort of comes in like a package. It very rarely comes alone. So you get all of these other comorbid disorders, or sometimes people just call them comorbids, that come along with it. Alright, I hope this was helpful in some way to some people that are trying to understand this stuff. I know I'm not like the best at explaining all of this, and I'm not a professional in any way. Canada. But I hope this helped regardless. If you think I got something wrong, or you have fidget another word that you'd like to find, please put it in the comments. I really just, hope this helps, especially if you're new to the Tourette's community and you don't know what any of this means. Like, comment, and subscribe if you want to see more of my face, and I'll see you in the next video. Hope this helped, guys. Bye!